In today's video, we have a big signing in Columbus with the Jackets and Kent Johnson. We're going to take a look at some of the top players that are due for RFA contracts or some contract extensions that are not yet done, leading to a little bit of speculation of where things are at. And then we're going to take a look at some of the top players that have been heavily rumored to be traded that have not seen that happen just yet. We'll discuss all the latest from teams like Philadelphia, Toronto, Florida, Winnipeg, Vegas, Calgary, the Rangers, Nashville, Edmonton, Detroit, and a few others coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're taking a look at some of the latest top players that have not been moved here as of yet, plus some of the top contract extensions and new contracts for some expired RFAs, the more prominent ones at least that are not done yet, and wondering where things are at. Plus we have a signing, and Patrick Laine is of course kind of dominating the headlines here as well. So first, the signing in Columbus. They've come to terms with restricted free agent forward Kent Johnson. He signs a 3-year contract at $1.8 million per season. I think this is a pretty fair contract. I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest, on the length of it. A lot of people thought, because he's due for a new one, so was Marchenko and Sillinger. I thought Sillinger might be more likely to get more term than Johnson. Clearly, I think there's a little bit of a different opinion in the new regime in Columbus compared to the old regime. I'm not sure that if Kekalainen was still there and Davidson, I think they might have, or even Pascal Vincent, to be honest, they had former head coach. I think they had some concerns over Johnson. Just the way he was treated last year. Didn't have a great season. Had to do some time in the minors after a pretty good 40-point rookie season. A little bit confusing, but of course, like a lot of things were just kind of handled pretty oddly, in my opinion, on that team last year. And because of that, I thought it might be best for Johnson if he is going to stay, because there's been a lot of rumblings that he could be traded. But if he stayed, I thought maybe a 1-year deal to kind of reprove himself that his rookie year was no fluke, build upon that, and then maybe go for a longer-term deal after that. That was kind of what I expected to find happen here with Johnson, regardless if he's in Columbus or if he got moved or what have you. So to get 3 years at 1.8 to me is a great deal for the team, more so than the player, because I still believe that this player is going to be somebody who's very productive in the NHL and is only going to continue to get better. I think the 40-point rookie season was no fluke. Last year he had 16 points in 42 games, had some injuries, of course. The injury had a big role in losing time, had to play some time in the minors. It just really wasn't a great second season for him at all. And now here we are, needing a new contract. So at the end of the day, I think Johnson's output is going to be able to be closer to the rookie season, if not better, the coming year. And he's got 2 more years after that to continue to improve. So $1.8 million as early as this year, if not year 2 or 3, should be a steal. To be completely honest, that's a great deal for Columbus. I'm surprised, like I said, from the player's perspective, that he took that deal. I thought he would do the 1 year, bet on yourself, show that, and kind of rebuild his kind of reputation, if you will, and go from there. But Don Waddell gets a great contract in place for Johnson. And the comments that was put out by the player from Waddell and management on the press release really shows that they believe in him and see him as part of the young core moving forward as well. Like I said, I wasn't really sure where Johnson stood with the organization. There was a lot of talk he could get traded. But like I said, a lot of that was because of how things were handled under the previous people working there. And of course, we get all new coach and GM and everybody. So they feel differently for sure. And Johnson's likely to stick around. But if they do have a situation where they find, maybe this wasn't great. Maybe this is a scenario where they still consider moving him anytime in the next year or better. At least it's not a crazy contract when it comes to getting it to getting it moved. It's still very tradable for a young player who's got a lot of potential. So I think it's a win in all scenarios for the team. And in the end, Johnson, if he plays like I think he can, might regret signing for that long because he might have left some money on the table. But I understand why both sides would want to maybe consider this type of contract. Now, as I mentioned, that was really the only signing here today, but we have some other contracts that are not done yet. And they're also driving a lot of headlines and a lot of talk around the NHL as to where are things at, why are they not done, and what should we expect. We know a couple of players are expecting arbitration, including Marty Necas, for example. There's Ryan Lindgren with the Rangers. Those guys I expect deals to most likely, and I say most likely because it's not a given, to get done before their ARB hearings. Of course, arbitration hearings are going to be over the next few days here. They're coming up over the next week, so I suspect that both these guys will probably have deals in place sooner than later. But, is there a chance that either could get moved? I think there's always a possibility. But to be honest, I don't think it's very likely in either Lindgren or Necas' cases. I've talked about before, I think Lindgren, you're going to see them come to an agreement on a shorter term contract. I don't think it's really makes sense to do long term, not too long at least. The Rangers were believed to have a lot of reservations about that, given the style of play that Lindgren plays. He's dealt with a lot of injuries so far in his still reasonably young career, and I think they were a little reluctant to go 7-8 years. So maybe they settle on a 1-year deal. That wouldn't be shocking. But it wouldn't also be shocking if they maybe go a little bit more medium term, maybe in the 3-4 year range. Now, when it comes to Necas, again, that one's tough to peg. All the reports we've seen indicate that they're looking at so many different options. Now, maybe they ends up with a 1-year deal as well. We know Necas wanted a trade. We know that we have not heard, as of right now, that he's rescinded that, but we have heard that the Hurricanes really want to keep him at this point. They were very much open to moving him before, but of course free agency really changed a lot for their team, and I think they kind of are in a spot now where they need him. And you know what, even though we haven't heard anything publicly saying that they've rescinded the trade request, I wouldn't obviously be shocked at all. They're smart, they know what's going on. His agent and him are going to know that, I probably do have more opportunity here now like I wanted. I think staying is probably a good option. Obviously, players that I'm used to playing with, coaching staff that I'm used to dealing with. And from there, they're going to be able to push their boundaries a little bit to get the contract they want, because he's going to be able to be like, listen, you guys really need me right now. You've lost a lot of players. Let's get this done. I mean, we've heard before that they were looking at anywhere from a 1-year deal to a 7-8 year deal and everything in between. So clearly, I don't think the Hurricanes want to walk him directly to being a UFA. But at the same time, it's going to boil down to what number they're comfortable with. We know that the Hurricanes are a team that does not like to overpay at all, and they're going to figure out a max salary for Necas, and they're going to tell he and his agent that this is the best we're going to do, and that's it. And if they don't agree to that, then it could end up in arbitration, and maybe he walks out with a 1-year deal. We'll see. But all terms are on the table for Necas right now. Indications are he's likely going to stay, but we don't know for sure about that, because we haven't heard publicly that they've rescinded the request and are more willing to sign than they were prior to the draft and free agency. Of course, Jeremy Swayman's another big one out there that's getting a lot of attention still. Haven't heard a lot of new information in the last little bit, but the belief is, I know because I've seen some articles talking about more like mailbag type articles, getting different reporters' opinions on where things stand. And at this rate, it could drag on. There's no doubt that we're not really at a pressure point yet for Swayman or the Bruins. Neither team nor player, because they did have the option to select salary arbitration, they chose not to. We've seen them go through this before. We knew Swayman did not want that. And because of that would have been a pressure point. Obviously, like some of these other guys are facing right now, is either we get this done on our own or we go through this process that we don't really want to go through, right? And in Swayman's case, that's not happening. So really, there's not going to be a pressure point until we're getting close to training camp. I would not be shocked in the least if this deal got done tomorrow or next week, but I also wouldn't be shocked if Swayman's contract extension talks drag into mid-late August, even into the first part of September, until we're getting real close to camp. At the same time, from the Bruins' perspective, I don't really think they need to go into training camp with a big distraction. Obviously, he's not going to play or participate if he is not signed. But, Swayman's agent is notorious for driving a hard bargain. There's no doubt about that. Swayman knows what he's worth. They already moved Allmark to make the necessary, space to be able to, pay Swayman the big contract. And it's believed it's going to end up being, if they get everything done, unless they don't agree at all and they go very, very short term. But a long-term deal, he's looking at $9 million. And I know the Bruins might be a little reluctant to go there. But like I said before, they would have had to have known prior to the draft, prior to trading Ullmark, where Swayman and his agent stand, what their request was, what they're looking for to be in that ballpark. Now, of course, they might be, hoping they can bring them down some, of course, because that's how negotiations go. But, it's not like this would be shocking news for them to find out in the middle of July or late July that Swayman wants $9 million. So at the end of the day, I don't think there's really any worry for Bruins fans to be stressed about this just yet. Obviously, until it's done, it's not done, and it is a point of uncertainty, you could say. But until we really hit a pressure point without it being done, I don't think it's going to be one of those cases. Like a lot of these guys that avoid arbitration or don't have arbitration rights, we've seen a number of these guys go right to the wire. So we'll see. I believe they'll get it done. I do not expect Jeremy Swayman to end up being traded. Obviously, they traded Ullmark to make room for him to be the goalie of the future and get a big raise. So every intention of making that happen. But some of these negotiations for these RFAs, they drag on a long time. So if you're a Bruins fan and you're really stressed about this, don't be. It's going to get done, but it may take a while. That's just unfortunately the way it is. Now, lots of other players around the league, as I mentioned before. Laine's been the big talk in the last 24 hours or so. We found out yesterday that Patrick Laine was finally cleared and released from the NHL/NHLPA Player Assistance Program. All kinds of rumors popping up about him yesterday. We talked last night about a number of teams that were very much in the mix, with the Habs reportedly seeming to be getting the most attention on social media for all the different reporters and fans that are talking about this. Some obviously have intel, some don't. Some of it's just opinion based, but at the end of the day, Montreal seem to be getting the most discussion around them on social media. But like I said, we've heard about Carolina, we've heard about Winnipeg, maybe a reunion there. We've heard, even Anaheim, a few other teams too. Like at this point, Laine is going to probably have more kind of power here than what he normally would in this situation. I mean, he's got a couple of years left on his contract, $8.7 million. We know the Jackets would try to move him without moving or retaining any money. Probably not going to get a huge return, but at the end of the day, they've made it known they want to get him a fresh start. And Laine himself wants to be moved as well. This is not a one-sided situation where Don Waddell has gone into Columbus and said, I think we should move Patrick Laine. Like, Laine wants to go. So they're going to get something done. It's hard to say how quick it happens. It really boils down to how conversations go with different teams. I mean, at the end of the day, he doesn't have that protection in his contract, so they can theoretically trade him anywheres. And now that he's been released from the program, there's no issues that way. But I think they want to try to do right by the player and set him up for future success and make sure he's happy and content. At the same time, they got to look after their team needs and get a good return. So, like I said, he's the dominating headline right now. Probably the most likely player, or at least I would put him right at the top of my trade bait list here, of the most likely guy that's going to move sooner than later. But where he goes, hard to say. Montreal seems to be leading the pack, but there's lots of interest, and we'll see where that goes. A bunch of other names that we're still kind of monitoring around the league. I know in Florida, there's no rush to do anything. I don't think the Panthers have to do something before the season starts. But looking at their salary cap through next year, it's pretty clear that right now they've got three key players that are in a final year of their contract with Aaron Ekblad, Carter Verhaeghe, and Sam Bennett. Of course, keeping all three is going to be very, very tough. So it wouldn't be shocking if one of those players is traded. Now, the main player that's been had rumors around him has been Aaron Ekblad, but a lot of those rumors stemmed early after the Cup win, before the draft, and the main kind of rationale around Ekblad being moved, or the talk around him, was so they could try to keep Brandon Montour. Well, that ship has sailed. That's long gone. Their decor is definitely not as strong as it used to be. They've been deplenished here a little bit. There's no way. I don't think that it makes sense right now to trade Ekblad unless you're getting another right shot defenseman back who can be there with the team for a longer period of time. And that would be a very tough deal to pull off. I don't think there's any obvious things around the league that make perfect sense right now. So I think the odds of Ekblad getting moved before the season starts, probably pretty unlikely. Now, unless Florida happens to have some weird major setback that none of us kind of see coming right now, then I would suspect that none of these players would be traded at the trade deadline either. Now, not to say that Bill Zito can't navigate the cap throughout the campaign and maybe make a trade mid-season or early on or some point, if once he kind of sees where his team is at and see what they need moving forward, and if they determine that, which one of these players might be the most difficult to keep, then maybe we see a move in that regard. But again, some names to watch, but I don't think there's really, like I said, there's no pressure on Zito to make a move right now. It's just going to be a scenario that you're not likely going to see many, if not any, go to free agency next year. It's always possible, of course, but it just seems pretty unlikely. I think the Panthers know the obviously very much value, especially with Bennett and Verhaeghe. It's just a matter of getting things done. But if they do get those guys signed, Ekblad probably going to have to take a pay cut to stay. And I think it's justifiable with Ekblad to take a pay cut to stay, because I honestly think his play is still good, but I'm not sure that he's as good as he once was. So, if he wants to take less money to stay in Florida, then I think that's going to be necessary. So we'll see. Obviously in Toronto, there's still some talk. I don't think it's very likely at this point in the offseason that we're going to see a Marner trade, but could we see something later with him? I don't know. That's going to be a scenario and a storyline we're going to follow really for big period of time here until it's obviously over with, which it could take a long time. But at this point, there's not really anything new popping up on Marner. Unless we get new information to suggest a trade is more likely. I just don't see it happening. But some other names to watch are Nick Robertson and Timothy Lindgren. They're still very much out there. We know Robertson had requested a trade, so because of that, he's definitely a player we're closely watching. Lindgren re-signed, but again, still very much believe that he's very much in play. So, the Toronto Maple Leafs are mostly set with their roster, I think, to go into training camp. They could still make some tweaks. Difficult to say how things go. I mean, will we see a blockbuster trade between now and the season? I sure hope so from a fan entertainment standpoint, but it's difficult to say. So we'll see. But those are names we're watching in Toronto and Philly. Joel Farabee still a name that's out there as well. We saw them extend Travis Konechny to a long-term big money deal. Farabee still has a bit of term in his contract as well, and it's been known really for some time that he certainly is available for the right price. Now, what is that right price? Difficult to say. I think the Flyers would probably either welcome, maybe a different type of forward coming back to change up the mix, or a top four defenseman. Farabee is definitely a guy who I think can have a long career in the NHL and be a pretty good, productive winger. So I think there's some interest. There was at one point a major link to the Buffalo Sabres. We know the Sabres have tried and struck out on a few deals trying to upgrade at the higher level of their forward group. They get the Ryan McLeod deal done for their bottom six, but they have tried and had lots of conversations around a top six trade, and nothing has come through here as of yet. Farabee's the name that's been linked there. I'm not sure how deep talks got, but we'll see. It's another name to watch. In Winnipeg, they're still watching, of course, Rector McGroarty and Nick Ehlers. We know Kevin Cheveldayoff is a very, very, very patient general manager. Obviously, he has not found the trade he was looking for from McGroarty. I would not be shocked whatsoever if this does drag on. McGroarty goes back to school, and throughout the year, Winnipeg will determine what they need, and they'll consider, making that move at a later time. But we know Cheveldayoff is, one of the most patient guys around the league. He's not going to give him away until he gets what he wants. So at this point, could it happen sooner than later? It sure could, but I don't think it's probably a likely scenario to drag on. When it comes to Nick Ehlers, again, it's believed that Ehlers had made it known that he was looking for a trade, which is why somebody would continue to monitor, and why I believe it is a more likely scenario that he could still get moved. Again, hard to say exactly where he goes. He was another guy linked to Buffalo, but it never happened. I'm not sure the exact return request on Ehlers. We've heard about Carolina as well. The Hurricanes are definitely going to be a big team to watch, because as we know, they definitely want to get Necas done. They want to get Jarvis done, and they do still want to add a top six on top of that. They've lost a lot of pieces there, and they want to make sure they can still contend. Ehlers, Laine, guys of that caliber are definitely guys on their radar, so we'll see where they end up. I know in Edmonton it's still pretty likely we're going to see a cost-cutting move. Would still believe Cody Cece's the more likely guy to go. Hasn't happened here as of yet. We had heard maybe about Utah being a potential destination for him. San Jose is always a possibility as well. Even maybe to some degree, maybe the Ducks or the Blackhawks are possibilities as well. But, Edmonton, they're not in a huge rush. There is some that think that the Oilers might talk to Vander Kane about getting a deal done, but it's hard to say. Of course, they just hired a new general manager. So it's probably going to be a little bit here before we get much activity out of Edmonton. I know they're real anxious to get moving forward on a Leon Draisaitl extension, which again at this point, all indications are that it will get done. He's probably going to sign for pretty big money. We know that he's one of the most productive players in the league. If they do go 8 years, he's probably looking at $13 million or maybe a little bit better. Belief is though that he may want to do something a shorter term and maybe go 4 to 5 years, more of the Austin Matthews approach. So we'll see there at Edmonton. Detroit, Ville Husso's a name that we're monitoring as well. I still believe that Yzerman, with the number of goaltenders on the roster and other moves that never came to be, he's going to be trying to find something else. It was heavily expected that Jacob Trouba was going to be a Red Wing, and of course Trouba made everything and did everything in his power to make sure that didn't happen. Yzerman made some trades like with Robbie Fabry and Jake Wallman that were a little bit odd, questionable deals of why is he doing this. And at the end of the day, the forward group can probably live without Fabry a little bit better than they can on the back end without Wallman. The back end to me is not really better than it was before. They lost Gostisbehere in free agency as well. They have 3 goaltenders again, so Ville Husso still seems to be a guy that to me makes sense to go. I think they're going to definitely be targeting some help on the blue line. So we'll see what happens. Of course, they got the big contracts with Lucas Raymond and Mo Seider that are still not done. Again, like Swayman, no arbitration. And of course, these guys are not even eligible for that just yet. The belief is they're both looking at 7-8 year deals, most likely in that at least $7, if not $8+ million, which is going to eat up a lot of their available space. So moving Husso's contract would be a big help cap-wise as well. Vegas is very much expected to be one of those teams that still is, if there's going to be a blockbuster trade, I do have a feeling it's going to be involved that team, and Shea Theodore is one of the main pieces they will try to include to make that happen. So again, keep your eyes on Vegas. We know that they always are aggressive. They always are ruthless. They want to win as much as possible all the time. And there's some big names that we've already mentioned that are still, going to be on the market and could be on the move if the right deal comes along. So I fully suspect them to be involved. We know in LA, Arthur Kaliyev is a player also that wants to be moved. Hasn't happened here as of yet. They have had previously been linked to the Senators. That never came to be. I'm not sure if there's still any chance of that. I would say maybe not. But again, another player that we're looking at to see if he finds a new home before the season. We know if Calgary pulls anything off, that Nazem Kadri is one of the main names to watch there. He does have trade protection, but again, he's also been reported that he's willing to waive for the right scenario. There's probably only a couple of teams that he would do that for. Colorado being one, maybe the Carolina Hurricanes, not really sure about that. So we'll see where that goes. The Rangers, again, wanted to trade Trouba. That backfired famously, so that's not happening now, at least not at the present time. But Capo Caco is another name to watch. Expect, even though he's signed a 1-year deal, if they find a trade for Caco or find a way to upgrade, I know that I honestly think the Rangers might have some interest in Trevor Zegras. Zegras is a name that's been out there as well. I think, Caco probably wouldn't be enough to convince Pat Verbeek to pull the trigger, but, there would have to be more than that, but that could be a starting point to build a package to maybe make a swap there. Again, I don't think it's a 1-for-1 deal by any means, but I do think there might be interest from Chris Drury on Trevor Zegras from what we've seen around the NHL. And Yaroslav Askarov in Nashville, great young goaltender, definitely available for a solid prospect forward or defense is believe what Barry Trotz wants in return. This player is another guy that came close to being moved on numerous occasions. It was a few times around the draft that there was speculation there could be a deal for him, and they've never come to be. Obviously, once the it was believed that he was already kind of on the market because they knew, even though the Saros contract extension wasn't official till July 1, they kind of already had a verbal agreement that it was going to happen. So at the end of the day, that's something they've been working on for a while. Barry Trotz, again, can be patient here. There is no pressure point, no rush. They will get done when they find the right deal. But there's lots of teams that are definitely interested. You can throw Columbus in the mix. I know I've seen conflicting reports on Columbus, that whether or not they're in on Askarov or not. But I do believe that San Jose is definitely intrigued by his possibility of being a future star goalie for them too. So we'll see. And of course, another big name that we're waiting on an extension and is yet to happen. We haven't talked about him in a little while, but I don't, at this point, I'm not going out there saying that he's going to be traded because I don't have any reason to think that. But Sidney Crosby, we're now close to a month into free agency where he's eligible to sign that extension. Everybody thought, or not everybody, but a lot of people thought it was going to be a slam dunk, either July 1st or a few days later. We'd see like a 3-year extension around $10 million, something along those lines, easy to get done, that Pittsburgh is not going to, nickel and dime them here. They're going to basically say, listen, we know roughly what you want. Here you go. Be a lifelong Penguin, sign up, and let's go. But we've also seen some reports saying, wondering if he's going to take his time. Again, there's no pressure here. He's not obligated to do this right now. If he really wants to win, and if he decides that winning is more important, maybe he wants to see how things go and how this roster looks in training camp. Hard to say. I mean, we don't know. Like, a lot of people that are close to Crosby have said they believe that, he's won it. Not that he doesn't want to win. He's still ultra competitive guy. But being a lifelong Penguin and that legacy to him is just as important, if not more important, than having a chance to win another Stanley Cup somewhere else. I mean, in a perfect world, he wants to win, and he wants to win in Pittsburgh. And I get that. I understand that. So, the fact that he's not signed as of yet, though, is kind of driving some to wonder, why is that? Is he having second thoughts? Is there any doubts that maybe this isn't going to be what he wants to do? That's just a little bit of speculation. We have not heard from any reliable sources saying that things have changed or anything. But the longer this goes on, it's definitely going to fuel more questions, more speculation, and wondering what is going on Crosby's extension. And, is it going to change? But until it does, we have no reason to think that it will. It's just wondering what is taking this so long. This should be the easiest contract extension across the NHL to get done. You would think Dubas would just give Crosby exactly what he wants and be done with it. So is there any issues on that part of it? Or is this a case of Crosby saying, I don't know if I'm ready to sign yet? We know when his buddies Malkin and Letang were going through this, they were pretty anxious to get something done. Malkin came real close. He thought he was going to end up getting traded. Of course, that was pre-Dubas, but still, different scenario. But it just makes you wonder what's going on there. It should be easy, and it's not done. So when there's not done, questions around, rumors start swirling, and people start talking about, the whys and the why not. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's rumor talk. Of course, like I said, a lot of these are just names we're monitoring and keeping an eye on, because obviously there's some of the top names around the NHL that have not moved yet, that are very much been expected to, or that are very much still expected to before the season starts or into the season. But some of this is going to definitely drag on. There's not going to be all of these players move before the regular season starts. There's no doubt about that. But there's still, reasons behind all of their names being on this list. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's chat down in the comments, and we'll talk further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.